I'm in the big leagues, told her don't miss me. Ballin' like Houston, ayy, feeling like Whitney. I need a bag, bruh, send it through quickly. I'm making hits, dog, like I'm in the big leagues. Told him that I gotta go, dog. I'm riding the road, y'all. I think that I'm back in my bag now, so I need that go, y'all. Got hits when they throwin' the fastball, just too quick for it. Peeling off like the whip orange. Seen they effort this piss poor. I got too much I gotta tend to.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Another Turnover, the basketball podcast where a basketball fan with zero basketball credibility gives his opinions on what's going on in the NBA. Opinions that nobody asked for. As always, I'm your host, Mr. Chris Aaron Murphy, aka Aaron. And ladies and gentlemen, let's just jump right into it. Folks, it's good to be back on another week, another episode of Another Turnover of Season 3. We are now on episode 8? Yeah, episode 8, if I'm not mistaken. So it's been fun so far. We are coming towards the tail end of 2022, but the NBA season is chugging right along. So let's get right into it. So first big piece of news that we got to talk about for the week. So if you're a longtime listener of the show or a longtime viewer of the show, you know I record Thursday nights. So the big news that came out this Thursday morning was that Brittney Griner is coming home. Brittney Griner, if you haven't followed the story, she's a WNBA player for the Phoenix Mercury, was wrongfully detained in Russia and was sentenced this past August to 9 years in a Russian prison, which, absurd. But I have a Yahoo Sports article pulled up here, basically talking about how the sports world has reacted to the news of Brittney Griner's release because it's been months and months of campaigning. The Biden administration, kudos to them, has worked, tirelessly with tremendous effort to try and get Brittney Griner home. But since Brittney Griner has been released from Russian prison after 10 months of being wrongfully detained, President Joe Biden announced Thursday the 8-time WNBA All-Star had overwhelming support on social media from her teammates and other athletes and fans who advocated for her release. So her team that she plays for, or played for, the Phoenix Mercury, put out a tweet that was, pretty beautiful. Let me pull it up here. Basically says, miraculously, mercifully, the count of days detained has ended at 294, and our sister, is headed back home where she belongs. I'm not going to read the thing in its entirety, but just goes through to thank all the moving parts and, express gratitude for the Biden administration, the special presidential envoy for hostage affairs, people in the WNBA, the NBA, all kinds of people that worked, like I said, tirelessly to get Brittney Griner home. But a huge outpour on social media of support for, Brittney Griner's release and Brittney Griner coming home. So it's pretty beautiful. I know when I got the alert on my phone this morning, I saw that, Brittney Griner was on the way back to the United States. And I was like, wow, praise the Lord. Like, I'm, happy that she will be back in the United States. And I just felt an overwhelming sense of, gratitude. Because I was like, man, it's a Christmas miracle. She'll be home in time for Christmas. So a terrible situation, but, with a, somewhat of a positive ending that she is going to be home safe and sound back in the United States. So probably the biggest story from all day. But Brittney Griner back home in the United States where she belongs. But all right, let's move on here. Let's go ahead and talk about another big, I would say, big story that came out this week. Was with Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks, specifically between Trae Young and Nate McMillan. Now, there was a bit of a miscommunication, is what the reports are saying, about why Trae Young did not attend the game last week against, I want to say, who was it against? Against the Denver Nuggets. Yeah, that was a Friday of this past week. So CBS Sports article here says, when Atlanta Hawks star Trae Young sat out Friday's game against the Denver Nuggets, head coach Nate McMillan ascribed his absence to a miscommunication. Now, thanks to a report from The Athletic, we have a better idea of what that miscommunication actually was. So, according to the reports, Young skipped shoot-around on Friday to focus on getting treatment for his shoulder. It's said that he would then decide closer to the game whether or not he would be able to play. Reportedly, that, was not approved by Nate McMillan, and he gave him two options. you either come off the bench against the Denver Nuggets or don't attend the game at all. And Young ended up choosing the latter and did not attend the game at all. But ahead of Monday night's game of this past week against the Oklahoma City Thunder, Nate McMillan denied reports that he told Young to not attend the game. He basically went on to say, the situation, is private and, it's not something that's going to be talked about, publicly in front of a room of reporters. But here's where it was a little bit more interesting. I'm going to play a soundbite from Trae Young talking about this situation, and I'm going to give my thoughts on it because there's some things that I want to unpack.
Bless.
From your perspective, what happened on Friday between you and me?
It was just a situation. We're all grown men here, and there's sometimes we don't always agree. And it's unfortunate that private situations and private conversations get out to the public, but I guess that's what the world we live in now. But I'll just focus on basketball and focus on helping my team win. That's what I got to get to refocus it on.
But what's public was that you not at the game. So why weren't you there?
Man, it's how you at me, bro.
I was curious. You're leader of this team.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard for people who don't know the full situation to understand it. So, it's like I said, it's a private matter again. It made public, which was unfortunate. And if it was stayed private, it probably wouldn't have been as big of a deal. But like I said, it's unfortunate. My job and my goal is to win a championship, and that's all I focus on.
But you can see the perception, though, Trae. You are a leader of this team, and when you're not there,
yeah. But when you're an outside guy like you are, you don't understand in a private matter, in a private situation. You should probably stay on the outside. Like I said, it's unfortunate that everybody has to understand and know a little bit of the details that went on inside. But inside here, we're all good, and you got any more questions about that, then you can talk to somebody else about it. That's all I got to say about it.
So I thought that was really interesting, coming out of that, interview with Trae Young. And what I mean by that is it made me think about this. I was like, okay, so we don't know the full story, obviously. All the details aren't being made public. And I'm not saying that they should be. I really don't feel as if we should hear everything. It was a private matter, like Trae Young said. Private matter, like Nate McMillan said. But there's something that I want to think about here. Trae Young, if you remember in the 2020-2021 NBA season, the coach at the time for the Atlanta Hawks was Lloyd Pierce. And the reports were saying that Lloyd Pierce and Trae Young did not really see eye to eye, did not get along. This is all reports. Whether it's completely true or not is another story, but this is all reported back then. It kind of seems like somewhat of a similar situation brewing from when Lloyd Pierce got fired because Trae Young wanted him gone, reportedly, versus Nate McMillan now. So it seems as if, from what I've seen on the outside looking in, it seems as if this is a bit more about Trae than it is Nate McMillan. Because if you remember, in that 2020-2021 NBA season, Nate McMillan came in about a quarter of the way through the year, maybe about a third of the way through the year. And the Atlanta Hawks were terrible. They were absolutely terrible. But Nate McMillan stepped in, helped get those Atlanta Hawks players playing really great basketball, helped elevate them to where they finished, and they ended up losing to the eventual champions, Milwaukee Bucks, in the Eastern Conference Finals. Nobody had the Hawks in the Eastern Conference Finals. They were a 5 seed that year, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of years ago. So, like I said, there's quite a bit that we don't know, but there's just something there, I feel. There's a small factor of, this may be something that the Atlanta Hawks front office may be pondering, or it could be a passing thought. And this is all obviously speculation on my part, but this is the outside looking in. So you remember when Trae Young was drafted in 2018, the Atlanta Hawks actually traded up to get him. They originally had the 5th pick. The Dallas Mavericks had the 3rd pick, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Or no. Yeah, something like that. But anyway, they had traded up to try to get Trae Young. That was the end goal, and they ended up getting Trae. Dallas ended up getting Luka Doncic. Now, knowing what we know now, Trae Young is not Luka Doncic. Trae Young is an all-star player, but Luka Doncic is MVP caliber, in my opinion. So The Atlanta Hawks just gave Trae Young the Supermax contract, but is he going to be their long-term number one option? I mean, he just got the deal, so, on the outside looking in, you would think yes, but do you think Atlanta regrets that trade now? Probably not. This is just all pure speculation, like I said, on my end, but that was just some thoughts that I had about this. It's like, okay, we had one coach, reportedly didn't want it gone. Now getting into it with another coach who, Nate McMillan, is a proven coach. So, interesting to say the least. But anyway, let's transition to this third story here. Let's take a look into Kyrie Irving. We talked a lot about Kyrie Irving on the show this year. But Nike has terminated their partnership, the endorsement with Kyrie Irving. I have the NBA.com article pulled up here where it says Nike parts ways with Nets guard Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving's relationship with Nike is officially over. The shoe and athletic apparel maker said Monday, a move that came a month after the company suspended the Brooklyn guard as part of the fallout over his tweeting a link to a film containing anti-Semitic material. Company said in a statement, simply put, Kyrie Irving is no longer a Nike athlete. But Irving's agent, who's also his stepmother, which I thought was interesting, Shatilia Riley Irving, said that the two sides mutually agreed to part ways, and they wish Nike nothing but the best. And then Kyrie Irving put out a statement, didn't address Nike by name, but said, anyone who has ever spent their hard-earned money on anything I have ever released, I consider you family, and we are forever connected. It's time to show how powerful we are as a community. So now, Kyrie Irving is a sneaker free agent. The Kyrie shoes, though, I'll be honest, I have a pair myself that I got earlier this year. His shoe line is really, really popular. At least was really, really popular for Nike. He was making Nike a ton of money, and he was also himself making a ton of money. I saw a report. I think he was making about $12 to $13 million a year from his Nike apparel. So a lot of money left on the table from Kyrie Irving. But that's not all. I mean, we know that Kyrie Irving is in a contract year as well, because he did not get that extension from the Brooklyn Nets. So this is the final year of his contract, which he opted into. Like I said, missed out on a max extension. Now he's no longer a Nike athlete. What do you think is going to be the next move for Kyrie? Like, I'm curious to know, because does another team give him a long-term deal? I know Stephen A. on TV talks about, he's sensational talent, incredible, but he wouldn't give him more than 1 year deals at a time. And I understand his rationale for thinking that. And if I'm another team in the NBA, like, I want all that comes with you, when it comes to basketball activities. But is another team going to be willing to deal with or look past all of the other baggage, for lack of a better term, that comes along with Kyrie? I don't know. That remains obviously to be seen. But, who's going to be, what's going to be that next step for Kyrie Irving when it comes to basketball as a whole? I'm curious, because Kyrie Irving is such an interesting, character of the NBA. He could mess around and retire next year and, not play at all. He may sign with another company to make shoes, or not. I mean, I really don't know. He's an enigma. That I feel like that's an accurate term for Kyrie Irving. But it'll be very interesting to see what ends up happening with him, and I'm very looking forward to it, because I love watching Kyrie Irving play basketball. I genuinely believe that if he's not in your top 3 of greatest handles of all time in the NBA, then you're doing something wrong. Like, Kyrie Irving, absolutely phenomenal on the basketball court. But all right, let's transition again here. Let's take a look at the games of the week, games that I think you should go back on YouTube and watch the highlights, because they were good for a number of different reasons. But let's take a look at Monday's game that I wanted to point out. Monday's game was the Houston Rockets and the Philadelphia 76ers. The Houston Rockets defeated the Philadelphia 76ers 132 to 123 in double overtime in Houston. Now, this was James Harden's first game back from injury since early November, if I'm not mistaken. He got hurt pretty early on in the season. Didn't play well, bit rusty, shot 4 of 19 from, field goal percentage. 21 points in the game, 7 assists. So, decent output, but not very efficient at all. And Joel Embiid had a pretty nice game with, 39 points, 7 rebounds. And Tobias Harris had 27 points, shooting pretty good field goal percentage. So this was a pretty solid game from the Houston Rockets. I think Jalen Green ended up having about 24 points, if I'm not mistaken. So he played pretty well as well. But overall, a pretty solid game from like I said, the Houston Rockets, and that was a pretty big win for them because they're one of the worst teams in the Western Conference. I can no longer say that they are the worst team in the Western Conference because the worst team in the Western Conference is the San Antonio Spurs. But we're not going to talk about that. I'm not going to talk about them. Let's look at Tuesday's game. Tuesday's game was pretty fun as well. You had the Cleveland Cavaliers taking on the Los Angeles Lakers in Cleveland, where LeBron returning to the land where he won a championship in 2016. But the Cleveland Cavaliers defeated the Los Angeles Lakers 116-102. Anthony Davis did have to leave this game early, unfortunately. He wasn't injured, but flu-like symptoms. I think they said it was non-COVID related, which is good, obviously. But LeBron James ended up doing the bulk of the offensive load, had 21 points, 17 rebounds. I don't know what his career high in rebounds is, but that's got to be close to it. So that was a pretty solid output for him when it comes to rebounding. But this game was all about Donovan Mitchell, a.k.a. Spider Mitchell, 43 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and ended up hitting the dagger 3-point shot towards the end of the game to seal the victory for the Cleveland Cavaliers. So a pretty fun game to watch. Like I said, I would recommend going back and watching the highlights for that one. That Cleveland Cavaliers team, if they stay healthy, can make some significant noise in the Eastern Conference playoffs. I would not be shocked if they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. But last game that I want to highlight from this past week, this one was Wednesday. This was the Boston Celtics and the Phoenix Suns, the best in the East versus the best in the West. And the best in the West didn't show up. So, Boston Celtics ended up winning this game 125-98, which, a 27-point victory, but it was worse than that. At one point, the Celtics were up by 45 points or something like that. It was bad. It was really bad. It was Dallas Mavericks, Phoenix Suns semifinals bad. That's how bad it was. This was never close at all. The Boston Celtics were up, I think the first 3 quarters, they were up 39, if I'm not mistaken. CP3 came back in this game. This was his first game back after his heel injury. Didn't matter at all. He had about 4 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, so triple single night for him. Good job, Chris. But Devin Booker did not shoot very efficiently. He was 6 of 17 from the field with 17 points. And he's averaging, I think, over 30 points per game this season. I haven't looked at his latest stats after that game, but that Boston Celtics defense, something else. J&J for the Boston Celtics, that being Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, had 25 points each, both putting in about 5-6 rebounds respectively. But as of now, this Boston Celtics team looks to be the clear front runner, in the NBA. They are probably, they have the best record league-wide, playing their absolute best. I think they're number 1 in offensive efficiency and about 11 or 12 I looked for defensive efficiency, which, is above average. So they're solid. If I'm any team in the Eastern Conference, I don't want to see them when it comes to playoff time. So if they stay healthy, and they're not even fully healthy. Robert Williams has not played yet. Robert Williams is not back. So could be scary hours for the Eastern Conference if they run into the Boston Celtics in the playoffs. But before we wrap up here, we got to talk about, what's coming, Marquee Matchups. So this will be the final week of competition for Marquee Matchups. Week 9 we're coming up on. It's a close race. There is someone who is in the lead, who's got a pretty decent-sized lead. But this week, throwing y'all for a curveball, anyone who's playing, points will be worth triple. So games are typically worth 2 points each. We're looking at 6 points each for this upcoming weekend. So got to get your picks in on Friday. I will be posting them on Instagram stories. Usually by about 2 or 3 o'clock, they'll be posted. And get your votes in. But you can also send me, your votes at anotherturnover@outleague.com because I I will take a look at it there. But last week's games were the Atlanta Hawks defeating the Denver Nuggets, which I did not pick correctly. Then you had the Sacramento Kings defeating the Los Angeles Clippers. That one I did get correct. And then the Boston Celtics defeating the Brooklyn Nets, which I also got correct in a rematch from last year's first round matchup. But this week, some good games. I tried to pick some games that really could go either way. So Friday's game, you have the Phoenix Suns taking on the New Orleans Pelicans. New Orleans Pelicans, as of the time of recording, are now the number 1 team in the Western Conference. So Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum playing some good basketball. So I like what I've seen from them. But then Saturday's game, you have the Boston Celtics and the Golden State Warriors in a rematch of last year's last year's final. So I think both teams will have some extra motivation to play each other in this game. And then you have, again, the Sacramento Kings and the New York Knicks, both teams who have been somewhat better than expected in the earlier part of this season. So that one could go either way as well. But I think I'm going to go with, let's see here. I think I'm going to go ahead and take New Orleans against Phoenix. I'm going to take New Orleans against Phoenix. I'm going to go ahead and take, I'm going to take Golden State at home. They just lost a heartbreaker against the Utah Jazz when they shouldn't have. And so, like I said, I think they'll have some extra motivation. So I'm going to take the Golden State Warriors at home against Boston. And then I'm going to take the Sacramento Kings on the road. So Pelicans, Warriors, Kings. That's what I'm going with. But we'll see. Like I said, games will be worth 6 points each. So make sure you get your picks in on Friday. But ladies and gentlemen, that is all the show I have for you fine folks on this fine Friday. We only have one more episode left for 2022 because I'll be doing, at least, let me look at the calendar. Yeah, I'll be doing a show next week, and then the final 2 weeks of the year, I'll be taking a little Christmas break, a little Christmas vacation. But I hope that you all have a wonderful weekend. You get to do all the things that you want to do, like I say every week. If you could do me a favor, like, share, subscribe, leave comments, I would greatly appreciate it. But I'm looking forward to some fun hoops action for the weekend. But anyway, like I said, have a great weekend. Take care, and I will see you next week.
Told y'all that I'm 6 foot, but with the money statement, I'm 10-2. Too much that I've been through, so I put it all in that rear view. Clean money in a black whip, got old problems with the friends new. Yeah, I'm in the big leagues, told her don't miss me. Ballin' like Houston, ayy.